Hello everyone, my name is Jake Montoya and I am a My Brother's Keeper peer advocate with LA County Library. Welcome to our virtual draw-along series. In today's lesson, we will be going over the concept of shading, and our friend Bob is going to help us understand this principle. We are going to learn how shading and highlighting can influence our drawings and help make them look more realistic. For today's lesson, you will need a pencil, an eraser, and some paper. Blank paper, line paper, or even scratch paper will do. First, we are going to go ahead and warm up our wrists and our drawing arms by doing some light oval shapes on our paper. Warm up your wrists by drawing these ovals using only a circular wrist motion. Next, warm up your arm by locking your wrist and elbow in place and using the motion of your shoulder to draw your ovals. This sounds more confusing than it is, but by practicing this circular motion from your shoulder, it helps you build your arm and hand steadiness. Now, let's warm up our hand-eye coordination as well by sketching 3 dots and trying your best to connect all 3 dots in one fluid motion, like so. This technique is good practice to help you draw curved lines and to strengthen your hand-eye connection. Now that we have our wrists, our drawing hands, and our eyes warmed up, we can go ahead and get started. What does it mean for something to be shaded? What does it mean for a drawing to contain shadows? When we talk about shading, we are introducing lighting and depth to an image. We are shading, but in turn, we are highlighting. We are giving depth to a two-dimensional shape so that it becomes a form. Shape versus form. In the visual arts, a shape is a flat, two-dimensional enclosed area created through lines, textures, and colors. Examples of shapes are squares, circles, or triangles. Forms are like shapes, but are three-dimensional and take up space and volume. Examples of forms are cubes, spheres, and pyramids. Because shapes are flat, they do not require shading. If we were to shine a light on them, the whole shape would be lit the same and the light would be evenly distributed. However, since forms are not flat and have multiple sides, light gets distributed around them differently, which means some areas of the form will now have shadows. When we are drawing, this matters because if we want to give our drawings dimension and depth, we need to shade them to go from shapes to forms. Why shading happens. Light source. A light source is exactly what it sounds like, a source of light. A light source can be anything that produces and radiates light, like a flashlight, a cell phone screen, or the sun. This light source and the direction it is shining its light determines how and where shadows are placed in visual art. When we get into more advanced art, the intensity and type of light matters as well, but for now we will stick with the more introductory understanding. How do we know where to shade? We live in a three-dimensional world where most things have form, and we see shadows everywhere we look. Our eyes pick them up so naturally that if we try and recreate those shadows in drawing, it can often be difficult to know just where those shadows need to be. In order to decide where our shadows need to be, we need to first decide where our light source is coming from. Where our shadows are going to be in our drawing depends on first knowing where our light source is coming from. For example, if we know there was a light shining on Bob from the front, illuminating his face, then we know the back of Bob's head will be shaded because it is not getting the same amount of light. This is how we can use our light source to work backward and see what needs to be shaded. Let's have Bob help us with an example. If I put the light source coming from the right side, where are the shadows going to be? Yes, that's right. Over here on the left. And if the light source is coming from the left side, where are the shadows going to be? Correct. Over here on the right. Good job. Thanks for the help, Bob. How do we shade our drawings? Now that we know where to shade, how do we shade? There are a couple different shading techniques and styles we can use to shade our drawings, depending on how we want our drawing to look. There is cell shading, which is more graphic, uses hard lines, and is used for things like comic books, cartoons, and logo design. There is also soft, blended shading, which makes use of a more natural gradient and is used for things like portraits, studies, and realism drawings. Today we're going to learn a little bit of both. Pro tip. First, I like to lightly sketch where my shadow will end so that I know not to shade in past that point. With our shadow guideline drawn, the first techniques we can try are called hatching and cross-hatching. Using the hatching technique, we shade in our drawing by making quick dashes or lines to color in our shadowed area. Cross-hatching is when we go back over and draw those lines in opposite directions, making the lines cross. Cross-hatching. Hatching is easier when we are sketching and want to draw quickly, but cross-hatching is better if we are working towards a more finished drawing and want to blend in the shading later. Another technique is called stippling, or the stipple technique. With this technique, we do not use lines to color in our shadowed area. Instead, we make a ton of dots with our pencil or pen, and the more dots we make, the darker the shadow gets. In areas where the shadow isn't as dark, you can make fewer dots on the page and it will look less shaded. This is also another good technique if we are working towards a more finished drawing and want the shading to be very smooth. The last blended shading technique is called circulism and consists of making small circles with your pen or pencil. Similar to the stipple technique, the more circles you make in an area and the harder you press your pen or pencil down, the darker the shadow will look. After using any of these techniques, you can go back and blend them. You can make a quick DIY blending tool by rolling up a paper towel or napkin nice and tight and using the tip to blend your shading together. The tighter you roll the paper, the longer it will last. Another trick I learned is that you can blend pencil and graphite with your fingers. The natural oils on the skin of your fingers allows you to blend the graphite well if you do not have a blending tool, or even if you just want to try it out. Be careful though, because some of the graphite will stick to your fingers, so make sure to wash your hands before you touch your eyes or your mouth, and be careful not to smudge the rest of your drawing with your graphite-covered fingers. Cell shading. Cell shading is a little more different than traditional soft blended shading. Instead of a gradient being used to depict the shading on things, there is a hard line creating a cell within the image that is colored darker to create the shadow effect. Cell shading is a little easier in the sense that you do not need to worry about blending the colors. There is a much more clear distinction between highlight and shadow. However, the trick with cell shading, like all shading, is knowing just where your shadow needs to go. Earlier we discussed light sources, and knowing where your shadow needs to be placed depending on the direction of your light source. Shadows are reflections of the objects that cast them, or the objects that they are shading. With basic cell shading, we can replicate these shadows by drawing along the inside of the object you are shading, and darkening the side that is not receiving the most light. Another tip to remember is to be consistent with your shadows and make sure they are all reflecting the same light source. If you draw a light shining on Bob from his left side, then all the shadows are going to be on his right. If you draw any shadows coming from his left side, where the light is coming from, your drawing won't make any sense and your eye will tell something is wrong. Pro tip. You will not get shading exactly right the first time. It takes a lot of practice, like anything with drawing. Sometimes you get the wrong shadows or put them in the wrong place. It is okay. Trust your eye and take a step back and look at your drawing. Do you notice anything missing? Does it have too much of something somewhere? Is there an extra shadow? Follow your eye throughout your drawing and pay attention to the details. By introducing shadows into our drawings, we are introducing light. Shading has the potential to elevate our artwork greatly and take our drawings to the next level. It is an excellent introduction into the more advanced artistic concepts, and like with anything else, the more you practice, the better you will get. I hope you enjoyed this video in our Draw Along series, and I hope you are able to take these methods and apply them to your own drawings and characters. I hope you have all enjoyed this tutorial as part of our Draw Along video series. If you have, be sure to check out some of the digital resources that LA County Library has to offer, like these e-drawing tutorial books by Lee J. Ames on our online database OverDrive. You can access these ebooks and many more at lacountylibrary.overdrive.com. Thank you again, and please feel free to click the link in the description box for upcoming programs. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for easy access to new videos. See you next time.